Now we're official.
Okay.
So what are the memories that you have coming back in here?
It's wonderful because this theater, this auditorium is so classic and it hasn't really changed much. I think did Kitty say they got new upholstery on the chairs, but my God, this theater was the beginning of, I was 15 years old and was cast as Annie Sullivan in The Miracle Worker with the Helen Keller story. And it was my just, you couldn't even imagine it. So we were saying earlier, there was no teen culture. You know, there wasn't like, there were the Mouseketeers on after school. I'm really dating myself. Annette Funicello and those people. And then there was Haley Mills, who was a big Disney star. But you would go to movies to see this. There was nothing to say, oh, I'm going to be like, I think nowadays there's so many singers and performers that young people can watch them in a million different ways and emulate them. But this was so terrifying and exciting because there were no guardrails. You were a kid in a high school play, and I had seen the movie of The Miracle Worker, which was quite popular back then, and this great director, Ron Kane, who really became the only person who encouraged me. You know, we also had parents at that time who, you know, parents didn't drive you anywhere. Parents didn't give you lessons. Parents didn't, you know, they were not really, I mean, they'd come and see the plays, but there was no encouragement or anything. And Ron Kane took me in under his wing and just said, you really have an ability. And what did that mean? He found classes for me down at the Milwaukee Rep. A woman named Penny Reed was a wonderful actress at the Rep in the 70s. And I remember taking two buses, you know, to get down to the Milwaukee Rep to do this. And then there was a drama camp at Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana one summer I went to. And I asked my parents if I could go. And they said yes, but I had to pay for it out of my babysitting money, which at 50 cents an hour took a while to accumulate. And they wouldn't drive me. So I took a Greyhound bus. It was between my junior and senior year. And it didn't seem that strange. I mean, again, I have 3 children, and anyone who has kids, you drive your kids everywhere. The fact my parents wouldn't drive me from Milwaukee to Muncie, Indiana. But it was great fun because you find the Greyhound schedule, you know, in the yellow pages. And it was just an incredible adventure. So theater just opened up this opportunity, the idea of adventure, I think, to me. But this place, if it weren't for Ron Kane, who was the choir director and the drama director here, I don't know if I would have had any encouragement to pursue acting, which has turned out to be a really good thing for me to have done.
Yeah. Do you think it was more the confidence he and Greendale instilled, or was it a skill that you learned too?
Oh, there was no skill.
I mean, high school production.
I had a lot of confidence. I had a lot of desire. And something else, you know, when your parents aren't pushing you, you really have to want this. You know, I've known kids through some of my children's friends whose parents are really keen on their kid's going to be a tennis star, or their kid's going to be this, and the kid enjoys it, but they're doing it a lot for their parents, or their parents like them. Yeah. My parents didn't really like me. No, I mean, I'm being silly. But there was no, oh, honey, you're going to hang your star one day. It really had to come from self. And I think those years were amazing for kids. I went on to Madison afterwards, and everybody I knew had a job. Everybody had work study or, you know, something. Yeah. There was no, you worked and you found out what you could do and what you couldn't do, and you saved your money, and I was in Madison was a great time. I had wonderful teachers and a wonderful, many opportunities. But then I switched from being a theater major to an education major because no one was going to support me. Mm-hmm. And if acting didn't work out, and so I got a degree in education so I could substitute teach. Oh. You know, it was very practical. Yeah.
Very good.
And then I got accepted to the Yale School of Drama, and that's where I learned something actually about acting.
What other productions did you do here?
Oh gosh, well, this same Mr. Kane, who I have such fondness for, I auditioned the first year, a freshman, for Brigadoon they were doing. I can't sing.
I was looking through your yearbook. I was like, I don't see Jane in any of the musical.
Oh, I was in the musical.
Oh, you were? Were you in the back?
I sang tenor with the boys.
Okay.
So but I auditioned for this, and I remember him thinking, who is this girl, this freshman girl, who can't sing, who's up here trying to sell it, you know? And he said he just remembered that it was a kind of a tenacious thing for a kid to do. And the next year when I auditioned for Miracle Worker, he remembered me from that. And I was in The Miracle Worker, and then a production of Tom Jones we did. And then we did The King and I. I was always, you know, in the chorus, singing with the boys, but dressed as the girl. We did, what did we do? We did not South Pacific. My senior year, we did a play called The Apple Tree, which was incredible. It was 3 one-acts, and the final part of it was a chimney sweep named Ella, who lives in a chimney, and she wants to be Marilyn Monroe, but she can't sing. Mr. Kane really looked out for me. So what we did was, I'm singing this, chimneys are da-da, chimneys are warm, chimneys are a place in the storm. And then I'd crawl into my chimney, dreaming of being Marilyn Monroe. There'd be a big puff of smoke, and out came this girl named Jill Andre, who could really sing. So when I turned into the Marilyn Monroe, well, I didn't, Jill came out, and then she sang all the songs, and at the end, went back in the chimney, and Ella, the chimney sweep, was back, who couldn't sing. And I know Mr. Kane chose this to give me an opportunity in my senior year to be in this musical. It was my last time on this stage after being in this. We did HMS Pinafore. Oh my God. HMS Pinafore, which was also unusual for a high school to do. And Antigone, my senior. This is amazing, back to Mr. Kane again. I had a rather difficult relationship with my father, and Mr. Kane chose Antigone, which is the story of, the Greek story of this girl, Antigone, who defies her uncle Creon and buries her brother after it's been pronounced that you can't bury him. He was the enemy. And Antigone goes out there and buries her brother. And then Creon, the father, and there's this big thing of, this is the right thing to do, but this is what the law says. You know, the French used it against the Nazis to encourage French people to stand up to the Nazis. And he chose it as a way for me and my dad to kind of work some things out. And it did. And thinking about him is amazing, about that kind of encouragement, not just giving me great parts, but also knowing who I was as a human being and what I kind of needed and looking out for me. Yeah.
You were also in student council?
Weren't we all? I was, which is where I remember this incredibly cute, very, very cocky tennis player who was a senior. I was a sophomore. And there's a picture of us in the student council where he has just made me laugh about something. And we love this picture. Is he here? Where is he?
He's back there.
Oh, not listening to anything I'm saying. That's marriage, right? Talking about the student council picture. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a great photo of the two of us. And Connie Coughlin is with us. Connie was my best friend, and she married Rusty's best friend, Mike Coyote. They've been together for 46 years. And that story, I mean, Rusty and I then saw each other at my 50th reunion last year, and we got married this summer.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that. He was your high school sweetheart, and you connect 50 years later?
I was so crazy about this guy. You know, I don't know if you know tennis players. man, are they cocky. He was, oh, I was so into him. He was really, really cute. That's shaggy hair. And, you know, they kind of, you know, they just have this, well, he did anyway. Yeah, and we dated. And my best friend Connie went with his best friend Mike. And I said that I used to always just dream that he liked me as much as I liked him. And I'd come home after a date and I'd turn on Linda Ronstadt songs and weep. You know, all those sad songs about he'll never love me the way I love him. And he graduated and went to college, and I graduated and went to college, and he went to law school, and I went to drama school, and he claims he sent me a Pablo Neruda poem at one point, but I don't remember that. And 50 years went by until we saw each other at this reunion. And Connie and Mike had now been married for 46 years. And Connie said, "Would you like to see Rusty again?" And I thought, I would love to see Rusty again. We were both single again. He had raised his family. We had had careers. And I still had the ID bracelet he gave me from State Fair. Oh, I should have brought it. Where, you know, you'd get like these ID bracelets, and then there was a like an electric pencil thing that his name is engraved on it. And so I brought that when we had dinner again, and it was like 50 years hadn't even passed. And we started talking, I went back to Pasadena, and we just talked on the phone for hours and hours. And I couldn't believe how interesting he had become. I mean, I thought he was just kind of a cute hunk, you know, in high school. But we read the same books. He loved Mozart and the Marriage of Figaro, and I was stunned. He knows more Shakespeare than I do. The books we talked about, and I just couldn't believe how dear he was. He told me that what he wanted on his tombstone was a lyric from Surrey with the Fringe on Top, which is from Oklahoma. When you take me out in the Surrey, when you take me out. And the lyric is, "Don't you wish this could go on forever?" Which is so sweet. And then he sang the whole song verbatim on the phone. And he used to like me to sing to him. That's how I knew he really liked me. Because I don't sing. And he would be in bed here in Mequon. I'm in Pasadena. And one night I sang, good night, until we meet again. Adios, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, my friend. And he said, "That's the song from the end of the Lawrence Welk show." I loved Lawrence Welk. Grandma's would. And I thought, I can't believe this guy knows who Lawrence Welk is. And his 2 grown children have RL tattooed on their legs. He was a single father and raised these kids. And I could not believe how this guy had become, I couldn't have made up a man better for me than he. And then he proposed, and then we got married this summer.
In Saukville?
In Saukville, in a barn in Saukville. We had cheese curds. I wanted people who came out from California, I wanted them to see what Wisconsin, you know, a summer in Wisconsin. Boy, was it hot. But we did spray for black flies, and I said, how many brides can write that off their to-do list? But we had walleye pike and cheese curds and brats and a big keg of spotted cow, along with good champagne. And I love classical music, and we had a string quartet. And then, his surprise, he hired the University of Wisconsin marching band. And they showed up, and that was, it was great, because all my friends from Madison, you know, when they started playing the Wisconsin music, and the California people looked and thought, wow, this is a great place to come from. So, yeah.
That is so great. We'll talk about, you had a fantastic career, which we'll talk about in a second, but it's just such a sweet story. It's so cute to come back to where you started and find love again.
There is a poem, a T.S. Eliot poem called Four Quartets, and the final stanza in it is, and the end of all our exploring, or wandering, it depends on the end of all our exploring is to arrive at the place we started and know it for the first time. And I can't tell you, coming back to Wisconsin, I mean, my family's been here, my parents have both died pretty recently, but that house I grew up in, Greendale, you know, they built in 1968, and I wanted to get out of here. You know, I wanted to go to college. I wanted to be, once things started rolling, to be an actress and have all these great opportunities. And you come back here now, this is the most extraordinary place. And I've also known over the years, people's reaction to people from Wisconsin, from the Midwest, is so positive. Wisconsin, I mean, when people are applying for something and you hear they're like, oh my God, they know they work really, really hard. They have really good attitudes. They're fun. They like to drink. There is a reputation, Midwesterners, Wisconsin in particular, really have where I live in Pasadena. That is so proud, it's so positive, and I am so proud to be from here and to be back here.
Do you think I mean, when I watch Malcolm, I'm like, oh, she's from Wisconsin. I see it. Was that on purpose?
I said on Malcolm, I said, I never did anything on that show that I wouldn't have done in real life. You know? People are like, oh, she's such a terrible mother. And I was like, she's a fabulous mother. She knows how to say no. You know, if there's anything that's been lost in motherhood in the past decades, say no to your children. My God. Don't necessarily make them take a Greyhound bus to Muncie, Indiana. But, you know, you gotta have kids put a little skin in the game. You know what I mean? I mean, with my kids, it was always, they like sushi, which is really expensive. I say, unless I'm working, we don't eat sushi. It's too expensive. We would go to the movies. You know, those I don't know if you have them here. Yeah, you do. Margaret's right. Where the chairs go out like this and they're expensive, we would go to the dollar store for candy. We were not going to buy the candy and the popcorn. I wanted them to know things cost something. Going to Target, can I have this? I said, how much is it? $21. I said, well, the minimum wage right now is $7. Would you be willing to work for 3 hours to have that? No. Put it back. You know, there's a practicality about growing up here, about living here, about doing well here. I mean, Rusty too, he put himself through college and law school. I do have to say, it is very different. Things are so expensive. Education now is ridiculous. But Madison, my God, you know, if you're in the top 10% of your graduating class, you were in. And my dad wouldn't let me go out of state to school. I wanted to go to Carnegie Mellon, and that was probably why he didn't talk to me for a year, which is why we did Antigone. But Madison, oh my God, what a great school. And affordable. I mean, you know, Madison is great in that so many of the people from Wisconsin get into Madison. You know, the California system, they need so much money from out of state that you don't, you know, getting into Berkeley, getting in those schools is not a taken for granted, you know. But where my kids went to school, they applied to a lot of, you know, pricey private colleges, but if they got into Berkeley, you went to Berkeley because it was affordable as a California resident.
And you read all kinds of stuff on the internet, so tell me if this is true, that you had to fight for Lois to be the way she was and not kind of pulled back a little bit to be the normal?
You know, I didn't know this until after we were filming that. There a guy named Doug Herzog who was running Fox. Malcolm in the Middle was offered pilot season. You know, everyone is reading all these the studios. Nobody was interested in Malcolm in the Middle, and everybody passed on it. And at the last minute, USA had it, and then they dropped it, and then Fox brought it. And the guy who was running Fox was named Doug Herzog, and they do all these test shows to see how people like. Well, there were quite a few people who didn't like me. I never knew this. And Doug Herzog went to bat and said, nope, she stays. She absolutely stays. I didn't know that till years later. I'm so glad nobody told me that, because you just want people to like you. You know what I mean? But I think Lois was so grounded. As I said, I never did anything on that show. There was one thing I did. there was an episode where Lois doesn't know how to ride a bicycle, and she's got to be in at work, a marathon or something. And she gets Reese, the naughty kid, to teach her how to ride a bike in secret, like in the alley. And he's laughing, you don't know how to ride a bike, you don't know. And I take his head, I take him, and I hold his head, his face over this broken glass in an alley. And they filmed it like this, so the kid is looking up at me and there's broken glass down here. And I say, if you tell anybody I can't ride a bike. I don't know if I would have done that. Maybe if there was dog poop, but not broken glass.
Okay. What was it like going back to that character after, was it 20 years? About
25.
25,
We
yeah.
did that pilot in 1999. Clinton was still president. You know, it was amazing thinking of that because people didn't know. We had some people had like they were flip phones, but there was no like internet or smart. And I remember we were filming in the spring, and there's always a medic on the set in case something happens. And he had earbuds in, like with the radio, and he was gesturing to us, and we all went over there, and we said, what? And he said, there's been a school shooting in Colorado, a place called, if you think about how long ago that was, and the beginning of so many horrible stories of school shootings. But that's how long ago we were doing Malcolm. I was pregnant with, it was a long, long time ago. I had an 18-month-old daughter, Frances, and my husband was in a new pilot called The West Wing. I'm in this pilot called Malcolm. I want to have another baby, and one week in May, NBC called, and West Wing had been picked up. Fox called, Malcolm was picked up. The doctor called, and I was pregnant again. And I remember saying, I wonder if our lives are going to change.
It did a little, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was pregnant the first season of Malcolm,
wow.
filming all those. They had one of their favorites was this, they'd have a laundry basket, and they cut it out. So I could just hold it here, walk down the hall, and you wouldn't see this. Yeah, and West Wing became this huge hit, and then Malcolm became this huge hit, and it was a wonderful time in that he and I got to go to, both of our shows were so famous and getting so much attention. And then I had another baby, and you can't do it all. You know, I always felt guilty that I wasn't home with those kids when I was filming, and I always felt I was doing not such a good job on the show, because when I was with the kids, it was a very conflicted time, and West Wing was so time-consuming, even more so than Malcolm was. And, after 7 years of these shows being on the air, it was, our lives did change. We divorced shortly after, and I just wanted to be a mom, put the career on the back burner, and raise my kids. And Pasadena is just the most incredible community. They were at a school they could walk to, and the moms there are smart, wonderful women who now I knew from K through 12 with my 3 kids. And I became really active with, I did a lot of things. I took ukulele. When I was trying to have my first kid, the doctor said, "Are you under any kind of stress?" I said, "I'm an actress in my 40s during pilot season." She suggested taking a year off, and I did. I called the agents and said, "Don't send me up for anything." This is before Malcolm. And it was the most wonderful year. I took all these classes at UCLA that I had, the history, the Bible is literature, the history of the Western music. I love classical music, and I studied so many classical music, not playing an instrument, but just studying classical music. I would join book clubs because you knew you'd be able to finish the book because you weren't working. I got pregnant by the end of the year, and so when Malcolm ended and the marriage was over, there were these things I loved doing. I joined the the Conservatory of Music in Pasadena, became a board member there, took a lot of classes. That's where ukulele was also. And I worked with the public schools, the Pasadena Educational Foundation, raising money and working in theater with those kids, which is thrilling. Working with children, young adults who want to do this is so gratifying. It's so much more gratifying than, being on a set 12 hours a day and waiting and waiting and waiting. And then the Pasadena Playhouse it won the Tony last year for Best Regional Theater. I'm on the board there. Pasadena is like a little liberal arts college. It reminds me of the Midwest. There are lawns and sidewalks, and you can walk places, and people are pretty nice and down to earth. So that has been a great, great community for me. I did a lot of theater. I worked with Alfred Molina 5 times now. We did Long Day's Journey into Night there. We did Our Town with Deaf West, a production signing and speaking. I did a wonderful production with the Children's Theater. It's a play called Peter and the Starcatcher. It's the story before Peter Pan. This was a children's theater my younger daughter, Mary Louise, I had worked with. So I knew the director, I knew these kids. The kid who was playing the lead was in high school, and he had just gotten a call back to Juilliard. What is so thrilling for this kid, but it was opening weekend that the callback was. So now this children's theater, there is no money, there's no understudy, there's no, and the director said, "Would you do the part?" I said, "Yeah," I just sing. Finally, I said, yes, I would. So I memorized those lines, not completely. Kind of the first time I went on stage was the first time I ever heard the music. These kids, I said they were some of the best prepubescent talent in the San Gabriel Valley. And I was Blackstash, this pirate. It was in a church basement. And it may be the happiest time I've ever been on stage. And I love telling people this because a lot of times kids want to go into theater and they think that's going to be television. They see all this on social media of this and this. The great joy from acting is the community you're with. And it can be in a church basement, calling line, every time I forgot my line. The joy of community and the joy of this group coming together and putting on a play is the truth and the greatest part of acting is theater.
The Malcolm in the Middle reunion?
Yeah, reboot they're calling
Reboot,
it.
okay.
Yeah.
What was it like going back to that set, to that cast, to that family?
The fact that show got picked up in the first, as I said, nobody wanted it. And I thought I'd just be a mom on a kid's show. I'll work one day a week. Frankie Muniz, who's playing Malcolm, who was 14. He looked a lot younger. Dewey was 7. Reese, Justin he's probably 15. They were kids. They're all fathers now. I think Frankie is 40. Getting close to 40, he's got a little boy. Chris Masterson, who plays Francis, has 2 kids. Justin Reese has 2 daughters. And Dewey, God bless that kid. He finished when he was 14. He went from 7 to 14. His family lived in Boston. His mother stayed with him. That's a tough way to live from 7 to 14. And getting back into the swing of life as a teenager was challenging for him. He didn't like the spotlight. He didn't like people. And so when this all came back, it was like lightning striking twice. First, the fact it got picked up, and now to be able to do this again. We were all thrilled, but Eric, who played Dewey, not interested. And I thought, this kid, talk about knowing yourself. They were throwing buckets of money at him. And he just didn't want to go back into that world. He's like getting a PhD in Dickens, Victorian literature at Harvard. I mean, the kid is happy and said, have a wonderful time, but I'm not interested in going back into that life. Isn't that something?
Yeah, that is.
I just am so impressed that, I'm just so impressed. I think that's really great that he knows himself that well.
And it seems like you guys are, or at least you are, proud of that, and not like, hey, come on, we're doing
I'm
this.
so proud of that. So many times, well, it's kind of the history of the world, I suppose, but you see people doing things and saying things, and that I think in their core they know is not right for them, is not right for the country, is not right for, but there's some, carrot dangling there that is irresistible. And I think people sometimes make decisions that aren't in their best interest, or their families, or, because the lucrative being reelected or getting a lot of money, something. Decisions are made for a lot of reasons that other than the personal desire that you can be good at this.
Now, at least what I know from what we've seen from the trailer, what the story is, I mean, that it kind of, not exactly, but what that mirrors life as it went from the past 25 years.
Yeah. Well, this is what, when we all got together we filmed it in Vancouver, and those boys are all fathers, and Brian said they're the age we were 25 years when we did this, because I had, I had an 18-month-old, I was pregnant with the next one, then had another one. Brian had a 6-year-old daughter, and we're now, we couldn't believe how old we were compared to where these kids are now. They were us, and getting to know them as adults and hanging out with them as grown-ups and not just kids you're screaming at was just great fun. And Brian, oh my goodness, his career has been, it doesn't happen that way. He is so talented, he loves it, he is such a hard worker, he is such a great guy that, he deserves everything he gets. But it's just been phenomenal.
Yeah. It just all seems so joyful.
Well, he was the one who wanted to do this reunion more than anybody. Because you'd hear things in the press, and I'd say, no, you guys, there's not going to be, no, I don't think so. And then Brian called and said he's been really, yearning for this. And Linwood Boomer, our director, said, unless I can come up with something good, I don't want it just to be, the family goes to Hawaii for Christmas, a Malcolm reunion. And came up with this idea of, it's the 40th wedding anniversary of Hal and Lois. And everybody comes back, people that you saw across the years. But Brian was really, really a big part of it. And I think maybe they were really interested in doing it because friggin' Bryan Cranston was going to be in it. I said the only one he wanted to do it because he wouldn't be killing people. Breaking Bad, he was. I said, you can come back and be Hal, and you're just this goofy guy.
Is that role the one that, for your life, impacted you the most? But is there any other role that you played that really connected with you?
There's this play, Our Town, that I mentioned, that it just has. I've loved that play. I've directed it, I've acted in it, I've doing it with Deaf West, this deaf community of actors, was just an incredible experience. That really had a great impact on me. Thinking, I'm such a talker, and I was like, how am I going to get along with these people? They don't. And communication is just a glorious thing. That was a tremendous experience. I also did a play. I did it in New York in 1994, and then we did it in LA, and then I'd done it on radio, a play called Kindertransport, which was about, the Kindertransport was an effort to get Jewish children out of Europe before the war started in 1939. And they got 10,000 children from Germany, Hungary, Jewish children, out to England, Canada, Scotland, and the parents knowing most likely they were never going to see these children again, but trying to keep them safe. And it's, I played the mother who sends the girl on the kinder transport, and then there's a surprise at the end of it because so many years go by and this girl has really become an English young lady. And lo and behold, the mother survived the camps, and she comes to get her. And she looks like, you know, in the beginning of the play, she's a beautiful Hamburg housewife, you know. And when I come to get her, you look like, you know, somebody who's been in a concentration camp for 5 years. That play just has stayed with me more than anything. You know, I'm not Jewish, and doing research for it, I was in New York and going to the public library in New York, the Jewish division, the stories, I mean, and I would read this, and you know, I was taking notes, and at the end of the studying, I would think, I kept thinking I was going to come to a page and say, no, this didn't happen. None of this happened, because it's so unbelievable. And I remember walking up in Bryant Park, where the library was, and thinking, why aren't people talking about this constantly? What happened to 6 million people? I mean, we hear about this, and one of the things that became so evident to me, you know, when you say 6 million, you can't even understand it. But to think it's one kid, it's you as a little boy. Did you have a dog? Did you have a cat? What was your pet?
Rocky.
Rocky.
Yeah.
And you're a kid with your soccer ball and your pet and your backyard and your favorite chair. It was 6 million of you. You know, that really, really had a tremendous impact on me. Also, not being Jewish, when I had to come out at the end, I would always say a prayer, an entreaty to a mother who had perished in the Holocaust, just to asking her to just to fill me with truth. Just fill me with the truth when I go out on that stage of what that experience may have been like. And yeah, that play really, and it's so funny because it's the farthest thing you can think of in Malcolm in the Middle.
Right? I mean, that's like, looking at your credits, like, oh, this is what everyone knows you for, but you've done some heavier stuff too, you know?
You know, it's so crazy. They always say casting directors are, round up the usual suspects. You know, we need somebody funny, okay, bring them in between these ages. When I got out of Yale, one of the first things I did was a movie with Robert De Niro and Meryl Streep. You know, she had just done Sophie's Choice, and I couldn't even breathe around her. You know, I was like hyper, I was so in awe of her. And I was doing Hill Street Blues, which for a girl, I didn't want to be in that. You had that clip-on tie, and you always had to have the belt with the stick, and so I got this movie, and I went into Stephen Bochco and said, you know what, I just got this movie, so you're gonna have to write me off. And he said, well, why don't you just go do the movie, we'll put you in a coma or something, and you can come back. And I was like, yeah, I don't wanna be on Hill Street. I said, I'm gonna be in a movie now. Well, do it and come back. I was like, so I get killed. Clara Pilski, I was Ed Miranaro's partner, and I get killed, and it's kind of a great, you know, shot in the face. And my mom would always watch with her bridge club. And she said, why didn't you tell me you were going to be shot in the face? She's like, we were eating our lemon meringue pie, and then Janie gets... So do the movie with De Niro. He leaves me for Meryl Streep. Huge bomb of a movie, which I never even thought of, because I thought acting with those two, he had just done Raging Bull. You know, this was going to be, and then getting auditions. You know, people thought of me as a real serious actress. I couldn't get seen for comedies. I couldn't get. Then I did a Neil Simon play on Broadway, and casting directors thought, Neil Simon? Well, she's funny. If she's doing Neil Simon, she's funny. So then I started being seen. But it was a very, I mean, when I think of it, it's been great, because I've been able to do a great variety of roles. On television, not so much. On television, mostly, well, no, that's not true. But the Malcolm thing really, you know, really stuck with, that was certainly the most acclaimed part I ever did.
Yeah. Well, Jane, thank you so much for your time. We're going to do some B-roll, I think, now. I've got 3 yearbooks right over there. Maybe you and Rusty can page through them. And
you know what? There was one of me, he said, doing the Miracle Worker when I was 15, and he said, you know, I saw you in that play, and I just thought, man, I'm not getting her in her way. She is going places. And I thought, did you really think I was that good? But it's amazing how long we've known each other, which is what made this coming back together again. You know, I would tell people, we have the same DNA. You know, he was born at St. Luke's, 27th in Oklahoma. I took baton twirling at Pinky's Bowling Alley on, you know, on the corner. All this stuff. Twirling in the South Shore Water Frolics. His family lived in Bayview. Then our families were in Greendale, walking distance from each other, you know. And being back here now is like, it's like coming out of a coma in a way, and seeing this place again and discovering it, as I said, seeing it for the first time, you know. Milwaukee is fabulous. When my kids would come, we would be in Greendale, and they were like, oh my God, what are we doing? And then I took them to the 3rd Ward, and they were like, you mean we could have been coming here all along? Yeah. And then, you know, that first stage we're talking about, first stage of play I saw, I can't. And the Milwaukee Symphony, the Milwaukee Youth Orchestra. Oh my God, we heard a performance of them. Then my cousin had Frank Almond, who had been the first violinist with the symphony for 25 years. In her living room, she had won an auction, and the talent, that orchestra, what they did with the performing arts, the old Warner Theater. Oh my God, it's thrilling. It's really thrilling being back here.
I got to do like a walk-on role with the Rep.
You did?
For Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
Last two Christmases ago.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah, it was so great.
Just hanging out with people. I know
right.
it. Oh.
I mean, the best part was sitting downstairs with the kids, because I had one, like I was on the stage for the last 5 minutes, so I was just playing card games with the kids the whole time. It was so much fun.
This would be something you'd think. If you had a big part, great, you'd be on the stage a lot. But if you had a small part, you got to hang out in the green room, which was often more fun than being on stage. You know, that last play I did here, the Apple Tree, when I was the chimney sweep. These kids, because there are often kids in plays too who are you know, they're kind of the awkward kids. Yeah. And that final thing, when I crawled back into the chimney on the last night I'd ever be on this stage, they had bought a bunch of red roses, and they were in the chimney on a stool with a note saying, thanking me for always being so nice to them. You know, you can win 1 million awards. That means more to me than, you know, just that you were a nice person, you know. Hello.
Hello.
John, Brandon.
Hi, John and Brandon.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.